we are in a transitory phase, right? We are in transition where APIs are extremely relevant, but it needs to evolve in this, what I call the Internet of Agents, which we are building. So in 2019, I remember Akamai reported that 83% of all web traffic was APIs. But that's going to change. Why was that happening? Because of collaboration between different digital services. Uh, Uber doesn't want to do mapping, right? Uber wants to just put a platform for connecting the drivers and the commuters, but then they need mapping as well. So they were getting it from another business, Google Maps, for example, right? And that's how they were using the APIs between the two digital services. And that's why the web was full of API traffic. And one other thing I'll just highlight here, AI is probably one of the most overloaded term. There is not one AI, and we need to be careful on because this has impact on where API needs to move into or where the impact on API is, how API needs to evolve. Because previously AI was predictive AI when we were just doing a prediction. Hey, what is the prediction of the Uber price from point A to point B? What is the search price prediction? Predict whether this image is a cat or dog. That was AI, right? But then we moved into generative AI. It's still AI, but it's different. So instead of predicting it's a cat or a dog, you give a prompt and it will create a cat or a dog, right? The entire dynamic changes. Then we have agentic AI, which where we are in this transitory phase, where these, let's say, digital services, whether it's a code base, it's an API endpoint, it's a virtual machine, they're all agentic. And that's scary and interesting and exciting at the same time, right? And then in the future, there is something else I'll not talk about right now. I'll keep it for the talk to put some suspense in. But coming back to how APIs are evolving and the impact on that is now in this agentic world where the agents need to use tools. That has not changed, right? So the Uber thing I was talking about, Uber needed mapping, so they used APIs to pull in the Google Maps data, right? So Google Maps was almost like a tool used by Uber, right? So these agents need tool as well. They cannot do everything on their own, right? How will they use tool? The first thing that will come to mind is APIs, but these agents are different. Agents will decide which tool to use. Previously, the services were not deciding what tool to use. It was coded by that application developer. But now the agents decide, right? So in that case, the strictness of the APIs do not work. That, okay, this is the API, this is the specification, this is the endpoint, go deal with it, right? Agents don't like that. When I say agents, AI agents, right? They want to, express intent. They want to understand intent. They want to negotiate intent and then work with it, right? So we, in this transitory phase, we are putting in some sort of wrapper, I would say. That's a temporary thing, MCPs, right? We are having lots of discussion in the API world about MCPs, model context protocol, right? That's the way to bring in all these digital services, the APIs, and put a wrapper on top. But I feel that's a transitory phase. In the world where every single digital service endpoints will become agentic, they are agents, right? Then the agents need to, negotiate between them, and the strictness of this API need to evolve. How that will be, what that will be, we still need to see. I think there is still a lot to do. APIs in some form will be there. We may not even call them APIs, right? We will still need interfaces. We will need agent to agent interfaces, right? Each agent will not do everything that they need to do. So there still will be Uber agent or Google Maps agent, but will they use APIs? Probably not. At least not in the same form that we see. It will be more agentic. So the way I say that is APIs need to evolve from this strict endpoint-based strict structure into cognitive interfaces where they have their own, let's say, cognitive understanding and expectations. We need to look into a world where these AI agents, of course, they have agency in there, but more importantly, these agents will not be, or definitely not, will be represented through apps where there are screens where you're interacting with, right? So the user experience will move into agentic experience. What does that mean? We'll have to see. Maybe we'll use more natural language than typing in a keyboard or a screen, clicking here and there, and picking something in the drop down. That will have impact on the API designs, right? So because right now API designs, at some point we assume that there is some sort of user interface there, right? That's going to be diluted for sure. Uh, so the impact on the API design, as I already started to talk about previously, is they need to evolve from this strict structure. Oh, okay, this is a JSON-based payload from from the request response. This is the endpoint that you interact with, and then if you fire off this request, this is the response you need to get. That strictness will not be acceptable in this agentic world, right? Because of various things, right? That's already happening in the current world, where instead of having strict interaction, we are using natural language, and natural language is ambiguous. There is confusing things there. It's much broader, right? It's not well defined. But still it works, right? This is how we interact. So the API design will need to move into a world where that strictness is not there. It's not endpoint centric and schema centric. It will need to evolve into where there is much more flexibility. There is dynamic discovery there, the context awareness. Right now, the APIs are not context aware. They don't really know why Uber needs to call the Google Maps, right? Now they need to be aware why it's calling. Maybe I don't need to go to Google Map. I need to go to somewhere else. So that's where API design needs to evolve into more flexibility, more context aware, more intent aware, and to have that agency based intent negotiation.